Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a while. Welcome back to Pirate Radio. So let's see. Been traveling, been doing all the things. Got back from Indiana. Some of you were there, and we hung out, and it was cool. Shot a whole bunch of guns. If you know what I'm talking about, great. If not, well, you're not in the club. I'm in the club. So this episode, I wanted to, even though there's a whole bunch of news going on, some of which will kind of apply here, I wanted to talk about some conspiracy theories and what that means and what people think, what your favorites are. Feel free to comment them in the comments. That was dumb. Anyway, conspiracy theories are a very interesting thing in that I think they're uniquely American. I don't know why that really is. I don't know that like sub-Saharan Africa has like conspiracy theories. Maybe they do, but it's something that's very popular in the United States. I know that other countries kind of look at us as like uh, kind of unique or crazy that we have all these conspiracy theories. Not that we give a shit what they think about us, but um, it is kind of unique and uniquely American, and I love it. And I think that it is a good thing when you have conspiracy theories. Now, there's this prevailing wisdom for some reason, even though 30 seconds worth of Google searching, that's a conspiracy theory in and of itself, I guess. Um, there's this prevailing wisdom that the term conspiracy theory was created in the 60s in the wake of the JFK assassination and that the CIA perpetuated it, blah, 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 or that they created it. They might have perpetuated it, but they did not create the term conspiracy theory. It goes back to some writings, letters to, or a letter to the editor back into the 19th century, mid 1800s, late 1800s. So conspiracy theory has been around for a while, at least in the United States. That's kind of the first time it really shows up. And it's gone on from there. Um, Curious what most folks think about conspiracy theories, what that means to them. Kind of just a little bit of me kind of thinking in my head what a conspiracy theory really means. I guess it's every conspiracy theory, much like a good joke, is rooted in some sort of truth, a true event with some sort of like counter narrative that, at least on a surface level, makes sense and at best has evidence to support a counter narrative to the official narrative, whatever that means. That can be the government source, that can be I guess it's mainly the government source. Didn't really think too hard about that, apparently. But, I guess I don't know, I guess one of the best conspiracy theories, whatever that means, the most popular one is probably the JFK assassination and the events surrounding it. The man on the grassy knoll was a big thing for a long time. Multiple shooters, the magic bullet. But it does revolve around a real thing that happened in which JFK was assassinated in Dallas, Texas in 1963. And there was a video of it in this kind of the Zapruder film, if you're not familiar, which if you're not familiar, I don't know how you even listen to this because you're living in a cave or something. But even then, if you're not familiar with the JFK assassination, kind of a timeline of it is a man named Zapruder, I don't remember his first name, bought a 8 millimeter camera. I believe it was 8 millimeter, and this was like the first thing he ever shot. He bought it, went down to watch the president come to Dallas, Texas. He was going to film the thing, and he caught the assassination on film. And most people had no idea that this video existed until like 1972 or 3. Basically 10 years later, this thing was put on a comedian's show of all things. Basically, a network had bought it. And this is part of the conspiracy theory of JFK is that why didn't anyone ever see the film or the footage? Why did they try to hide it, or they're missing scenes? Blah blah blah. You know, any number of things that can go around it. I did come up with an idea in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination of that. You know, perhaps with the Zapruder film, which it's very hard to watch, even as bad as the quality is compared to what we're used to. It's pretty obvious what's happening. It's very obvious what Jackie's doing after some of the shots ring out. Um, the thought I had is that maybe, just maybe, there was someone of wealth and means and power who was able to purchase this. I'm pretty sure that this was like in an NBC archive, that they had it. It was like in a network archive. They had it. Someone found it, bought it, attained it. I think it was Dick Cavett, actually, a comedian, and then he showed it. But anyway, my thought around it was is that someone of means and ability bought this to ensure that it was never seen around the world, around the globe, and shown on the local television. Just bought it. Didn't want to destroy it, obviously, because it is something of some note, but just stuck it on a shelf somewhere for no one to ever find. And then, unfortunately, someone found it. Which, um, watching what happened to Charlie Kirk, I'm sure that there are those that wish there was a way that this tape never existed, that the footage never existed, and that it could have gone away forever. Because much like Charlie Kirk, um, John F. Kennedy had a young son, at least he had JFK Jr. I think he had another young child. And I think the idea, you know, it's kind of a noble cause, if you will, if you're able to tame that video and either they never see it or you're able to maybe gift it to them, as morbid as that sounds, one day, tell them what it is and say, hey, here you go. Do with this what you will. But anyway, um, so conspiracy theories are going to have some constant truths of events. Then they're going to have some that surround them, mainly the event itself that everyone can see, like 9/11, planes that hit towers, and um, uh, that's kind of where the conspiracy starts with that. So that did happen. And then you're going to have the counter narrative that also has some bit of truth to it. Is anyone really sure what hit the Pentagon? Um, we were told that a plane hit the Pentagon. The CCTV footage that we have just it's very difficult, and I understand it's kind of a time lapse video. Um, but man, that's tough. Probably should be showing that video, but this is a podcast and I'm not the world's greatest producer. I can barely get the sound right, which I'm assuming the sound has very good sound right now and is not overbearing or too quiet. So, anyway, part of the problem that you have too when you have that kind of conspiratorial mind, it's Well, let's see what happens with this. Anyway, so we'll try a different microphone. It's not as good as a microphone, but maybe you can actually hear it. Anyway, producing. Anyway, so confirmation bias is a big deal. When you get that little bit of information, it's very tough to not go around and just use that as something that is a big deal. See if I can upload this. So, so one of the things that happens with your confirmation bias is you get these things and you think that this is some sort of like smoking gun, it's the world's greatest thing, and you've cracked the code, which is fine, except for the part where, because you're looking for something so deep that you can't actually see the forest through the trees. Basically, what that really means is you've gone in and decided that this thing is so perfect that now it's become fact because it's exactly what you were looking for, when in fact all it did was confuse you more. So one of the key aspects of this is from the 9/11 stuff, and I'm going to put up a picture. Theoretically, I'm going to put up a picture. So this allegedly is from the World Trade Center, and if you're listening and not looking at this, not watching it, what you're going to see is you see two firefighters in the foreground. Behind them is the World Trade Center rubble with a beam that appears to have been cut in a diagonal fashion. And it has some melting around it. I have a slightly better picture here that's zoomed in, and we'll present that one. So you have a very hard diagonal cut, a beam that has almost obviously been cut, and you have some melting at the top where it started to be cut and at the bottom where it was cut. And the prevailing wisdom of this, if you search online, is that it was thermite that did this. Okay, this mic seems to be working, so we're going to stick with this mic. Ah, Jesus Christ. So, we have our image here of a cut beam from what we're told is the World Trade Center. We have two firefighters standing in front of that said cut beam in the zoom out photo that we're told is from the World Trade Center, which is fine. It very well may be the World Trade Center. Unfortunately, we don't know what the day is here. I don't know if this is a week later, a day later, a month later. Two of the things that stand out to me are the firefighters have firefighter jackets on and a helmet, but they don't have any other protective gear. They don't have a mask. They don't have a respirator. They have kind of run-of-the-mill gloves, and they have dangling flashlights. Their jackets aren't even zipped up or closed tight. It's almost the assumption that these are firefighters, but they really just look like they're sifting through rubble. So it is plausible that the beam was cut intentionally after the fact. So this is one of those things in in a conspiracy theory where it's your confirmation bias, because if the conspiracy is that the World Trade Centers was an inside job, you're going to go out and try to find any little bit of information that proves your point to the conspiracy. But something like this, you have no clue actually when this was taken, who took it, and if you were alive at the time of 2001, you understand that digital photographs, digital cameras were few and far between at the best. We were still developing film. There was still film developing places on every street corner. Kodak, Polaroid, all of those guys were still a thing. So even with those, all of us can remember the little like kind of orangish, reddish time imprint and date that would be on those. Generally, they weren't always there, but they were very ubiquitous. So it's very suspect at best, this picture. And that's before we get into any sort of last decade, decade and a half of Photoshop being a thing. Now you have the AI stuff, any number of things. I'm sure you can trace this photo back to a certain date, but can you trace it back to 9/11? That's going to be a tougher putt, quite a bit tougher putt. So, yeah, I don't know. It's always a little, I don't know. I don't know. It's, people will cling to this for whatever reason, and they need to like just take 2 steps and just think about things. You know, and it's almost like as conspiracy theories go back and older, this becomes worse and worse and worse. I don't know. You do yourself a disservice when you do this. One of the biggest conspiracy theories out there that's been perpetuated by Joe Rogan, some other people. There's a lot of people I've talked to in real life that don't believe that we ever landed on the moon. Now, it's very possible that we never landed on the moon. It's also very possible that Stanley Kubrick was hired to shoot a video to, just in case we didn't make it or this, that, or the other, we would have had some sort of video or some fill-in footage. Like, any number of things are plausible in that scenario, okay? There's also the possibility that you're doing like glamour shots for the whole thing, because you don't know what kind of footage you're going to get when you send these guys to outer space. Like, it's just part of you. It's truly the unknown. One, you don't know if you're going to kill everybody involved, because that had happened before. Two, you don't know just because you send them out there that you're ever getting them back. You can do all the calculations you want. That doesn't mean that this thing's going to work. Okay? So there are reasons that you would hire a person like that, a Kubrick, to make this film. Okay? There's any number of reasons you would do it. Yes, it seems slightly nefarious on the surface, but I can get there. One of the biggest issues I have with the people that say that we never went to the moon is twofold. One is we did an actual number of 6 landings on the moon, 5 after the Apollo 11. No one ever talks about that. No one ever mentions the fact that from 1969 to 1972 we landed on the moon 6 different times. No one ever, who's the conspiracy theorist that we never landed on the moon, never seems to bring up the fact that, oh, well, where did the color picture of the Earth come from all of a sudden? I think it was the Saturn missions that went to the moon, and that we did the rover, and we had color pictures on the moon, and we got better colors and things of that nature. There's the other part of, you know, I've heard that, well, how are they talking to Nixon when they're on the friggin' moon, blah, blah, blah. It is possible. It's also possible that it was pre-recorded, okay? This is a big PR thing. You're trying to do this. You want it to go right. You want to have this kind of canned footage, if you will, or canned interview that you can then play for the masses at 7 p.m. Eastern, Central, whatever it is. Okay, everything today is completely different than it was in 1969, 1970. Okay, everything is different. The country's different, the technology is different, the people are different, everything is different. The other thing on the moon landing that no one ever seems to talk about is Apollo 13. Now, they made a movie about Apollo 13. I don't know how accurate the movie is down to the detail, but basically, as Apollo 13 was going to be another mission to the moon, and they had major issues. This is where you have the Houston, we have a problem came from, and they were miraculously able to actually get them back, even though they passed over and behind the moon and came back. They didn't land on it. They did get these guys back, and it became a story. Part of the crux of the movie is I think these guys were going to be the second ones to land on the moon after Armstrong and Aldrin, and I forget the other guy. I'm sorry, but most of us do. They were going to be the second ones to land on it. That didn't happen, but part of the crux of the movie is no one's really covering it like news-wise as it's happening live because they quote-unquote made it look too easy in 1969 in the first moon landing. They start covering it when they have the problem and they don't know if they can get them back. So that's another kind of inconvenient issue that the we didn't land on the moon people just completely ignore. So that's the other part of conspiracy theories is you can't completely ignore this stuff when it exists. You know, you can't take the little thing you like of Kubrick making a movie that was in parallel, I guess at best, with the moon landing and go, see, it was all fake. They made a movie about it. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Two things can be true at the same time. Kubrick could have made the movie as a PR thing, as a stopgap plan, whatever you want to say. Or he also could have made it as a... He could have been a patsy in a bigger game with, like, the Russians or whomever of, like, them still going, well, did they actually go to the moon or not? Like, this all can be spycraft, too. Now, course, there are those that will say, well, the CIA and whomever is not that smart. Okay, well, sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't, apparently. So if you're not smart enough to do a movie with Kubrick that may or may not be faking a moon landing, but you're also super goddamn smart to be able to take out Kennedy without anybody knowing it was you, which is it? Because paying a guy to make a movie and then hiring guys to shoot a guy, those are two big differences. So, seems plausible to me that that could happen. Did we go to the moon? No clue. Do I believe we went to the moon? Absolutely I do. Because we went again. Can we go again? Sure. Been there once. Go back. There's the other part of the conspiracy theory of why we never went back to the moon, even though we did 5 other times. 6 in total. And a 7th one that had an issue. There's also that of like, what did we find on the moon? Well, I think we found a big rock with other holes in it and dust. And it was like, now what? Been there, done that. Why do we have to have this, like, prove to everyone we can go back to the moon when we went 6 times? I don't really understand who we're trying to impress or prove things to, but hey, whatever. So, one of my favorite conspiracy theories that I have done basically zero looking into, other than kind of random hearsay, and when I say favorite, I say most interesting, and that is that in World War II, at the end, the Nazis did not go away, they were just co-opted. And what were they co-opted into? Well, allegedly, they were co-opted into the globalist cabal, if you will, quote unquote. the powers that be that now run the world and pull strings and do what have you. So, that's a crazy one. That one's super interesting. There are some things that kind of lend itself to that, and one of those is none of the Swiss banks that dealt with all sides, good and bad guys, were ever audited outside of doing self audits. We know that Swiss banks were doing business with the Nazis. We know that Swiss banks were doing business with European countries, Allies, Axis. Yet, allegedly, according to them and their self audits up through, I think, 2015, there is no such thing as Nazi gold. Yet, we've never found any Nazi gold, yet we know they stole a shitload of it. So, that's a weird one. So, again, I don't know enough about that, but allegedly, the Nazi regime. Their kids and grandkids are kind of the powers that be now, the Klaus Schwabs of the world, and then also that there are some of the descendants of the Templar Knights and the Freemasons are also part of this global cabal. Like I said, that's an interesting one that is pretty wild. So, the one I'm currently been diving into is the Oklahoma City bombing. This one I've done quite a bit of research into, but not enough. Still working on it. Again, I've said this before on the show. Spoiler alert, Tim McVeigh did it. Now, the thing about Tim McVeigh is the part where he didn't act alone. He not only had co-conspirators, he had help. He was part of a bigger network which included some federal assets, informants, and neo-Nazis, and bank robbers, and any number of other folks who were involved that we do know of. There is a John Doe number 2. He does exist. That was the picture for the episode today. Pop it up again. So the pirate radio, that is pictures. Those are FBI composite sketches of John Doe number 1 and John Doe number 2, in which that John Doe number 1 is allegedly Timothy McVeigh. And I say allegedly because there are other folks out there who are a part of the ARA, the Aryan Revolutionary Army, or Aryan Revolution Army, who were bank robbers throughout the Midwest, who were stealing money to gain funds to take on the federal government and basically start a war with the federal government, who they felt were overreaching in their capacity as a governing body. Kind of nutty. But there is another guy who was part of the ARA who very much resembles John Doe number 1, and another guy who very much resembles John Doe number 2. Neither of which were ever tried or implicated in the Oklahoma City bombing. But both of them are pretty well dead ringers for both John Doe number 1 and number 2. You have approximately 23 eyewitnesses morning of the Oklahoma City bombing that saw Tim McVeigh with another person in the Ryder truck. That's a problem. The other problem that I think the government has in their official story is they were able to trace the Ryder truck through an axle that was blown, I think, approximately 500 feet onto another road, hit a car, and landed in the street. To which, according to 2 different sources, the timeline of that was they found it that afternoon and were able to pull a partial VIN off of that Ryder truck, trace it through a national database to find out the full VIN, and who the truck belonged to, which turns out to be Ryder, then make contact with the Ryder company, who then finds that the truck was purchased by them and was rented from a Ryder rental truck facility in, I believe, Junction City, Kansas, to which the FBI was then able to dispatch their closest special agent, who got there that afternoon around 3:34 p.m. The bomb went off at 9 o'clock. I think 9:02 a.m. to be specific. This is Central. This is Oklahoma time, so what we call normal time, folks. So the bomb goes off at 9:02. They somehow are able to, according to the guy, Mike Murphy, who I believe that was his name, was Mike Murphy. According to the guy that they got, the Oklahoma City Police Department officer, who they got to go get the axle, he was able to work on it with a file and wire brush and whatever to pull this partial VIN, so it wasn't like you just walked up and looked at it. The other part of it is, the officer said, when he saw it, he said, "I knew this was our bomb vehicle." Well, how the hell would you know this was your bomb vehicle? And every time I ask that to the layperson, they go, "Well, they had video of it." Okay, let's take your assumption that they had video of it. The video that existed in 1995, even the tip of the spear was non-digital. Okay, even if it was digital, the digital readout is going to be inside the building, most likely. This is just a random federal building. This is not an FBI building. You're not plugged in. This is an FBI, or this is not an FBI building, it's just a federal building. This, mind you, even if it was digital, which it wasn't, because the FBI in the year 2000, in 2001, didn't have internal email. They still had to send faxes for things. Okay? So there's that. That comes up when you start talking about 9/11 and why they were so inefficient. So in 1995, even the best cops in the land, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, didn't have email. They didn't have digital assets. They didn't have a digital readout. This video was not going to a digital hard drive. Computers in 1995 were absolute trash. Anybody who was alive then can tell you they were absolute trash. So, let's say at best in April of 1995 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, the best thing you're going to have is you're going to have a camera that's sitting outside that's wired into a VCR somewhere that's recording on a VHS tape, on magnetic tape. Okay, so let's say that they do catch the bomb vehicle, what turns out to be the bomb vehicle, pull in, park, and then of course it all goes black when the bomb goes off. But let's say they knew that that was it. Okay, great. Well, they still got the tape somewhere. So let's say the tape is undamaged. Let's say you can even go get the tape. Some miraculous way you're able to get this. Okay. Now you have to take the tape somewhere else, put it into a VCR, and now you have to assess the tape. Theoretically, these tapes will be changed out on like either 8 or 12-hour intervals depending upon the actual VHS tape that is being used. Yes, there were 12-hour tapes. There were 4, 6, 8, 10, 12-hour tapes. So you're going to be somewhere in 8 to 12 hours because those are going to be kind of your shifts. You can stagger them correctly, what have you. Let's say you were set up on multiple, so you have a 30-minute overlap. Well, now you have 2 tapes that you'd have to assess, at the very least. Someone has to sit down, watch the tape, look for it, see the truck, see it go black, look back and go, we think that's the truck or the vehicle or the whatever. That's great. Assuming all of that goes well, assuming the perfect timeline, you would be somewhere in the neighborhood of what? 1 p.m.? These are huge assumptions here in a timeline as well. That everything went perfect, that you were able to get through the rubble, that the thing survived the blast, all of these things. This is not possible. This is the level of impossible as like, I don't know, the hijacker's passport surviving the 9/11 attack where they flew the plane into the building and his passport flew out, landed in the street, was unscathed. No one believes that story about that hijacker, even though there is the smallest possibility and a much better possibility that as you're flying at 400 miles an hour and you go through and hit the building, that it could possibly carry out because you were at the front in just some way your passport went out the other side or out whatever. There is the slightest possibility that that happened. And no one believes that, and you want me to believe that in Oklahoma City in 1995 that they were able to dig up the magnetic tape that was connected to the camera that caught the Ryder truck pulling in, then assessed it, realized it was a Ryder truck. Then they said, oh boy, this is our axle that went 500 feet away. We pulled a partial VIN, and by 3:30, 4 o'clock p.m., you have a guy in Junction City, Kansas, who is interviewing the people that rented the truck to the bomber, who is now getting a composite sketch of John Doe number 1 and number 2. Bullshit. So, again, as I started this with my favorite conspiracy theory currently, at least the one I know a lot about and is going to learn more, Tim McVeigh did do this, but they knew Tim McVeigh was a suspect because they had FBI informants implanted with actual FBI assets implanted. I can't say that they had actual FBI agents undercover in there, but they had assets that they trusted that were FBI adjacent that were there. That's why they knew who they were looking for, what they were looking for, and how they were looking for it, because they had been tracking McVeigh and Nichols and all of the ARA throughout the Midwest. That's how I know. Do I have proof? Not really. But do I have a whole lot of circumstantial evidence? Yes, I do. The other part I'm working on is I believe there is an overlap between the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and the Oklahoma City bombing, because they are eerily similar in the way that they were done. This is also why you get in the early reports of Oklahoma City in 1995, they were looking for Muslims because this mirrored 1993 World Trade Center almost to a T, with a cargo truck, a Ryder truck, loaded with a bomb in the back. Boom, that went off. Okay? So, early on, you get reports after they've already said that they're looking for a Ryder truck, that it was a Ryder truck, that it was a truck bomb. Bang. Anybody with half a brain who knew anything about 1993, especially in the FBI, is going to go, this sounds like that one. These sound similar. Maybe we should be looking for some Muslim guys who are, very devout Islamists. So initially they were. And then it all got busted up. Now, the crossover here is going to be that Terry Nichols, who was co-conspirator number 1, convicted serving life in Colorado at a federal max prison, he was convicted of being a co-conspirator. He also has a Filipino wife that he met in the Philippines, kind of like a mail-order bride, I believe. I don't know that to be fact. Seems like it. He was in the Philippines the same time that a Ramzi Youssef was in the Philippines as well, working on the Bojinka plot. Now, who's Ramzi Youssef? Ramzi Youssef is the mastermind of he was the bomb maker, possible mastermind, still unclear of that. There's some KSM crossover, but Ramzi Youssef is the nephew of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, also known as Mukhtar, who was also working on the Bojinka plot in the Philippines to take 13, no less than 13, or approximately 13 airliners and crash them into buildings on the east coast of the United States. Sound familiar? Now, KSM is the uncle of Ramzi Youssef. Ramzi Youssef and Terry Nichols are in the Philippines at the same time. Now, very circumstantial, I get it. But Ramzi Youssef learned how to build bombs in Afghanistan under the Taliban post-Soviet war. he learned under what would become Al Qaeda. It's hard to know when they actually started naming themselves Al Qaeda, but he knew Bin Laden, he obviously knew KSM, and he knew a whole bunch of other people. Okay? He got the hell out of Dodge after the 93 bombing, landed in the Philippines. They uncovered the Philippines thing because he was working on the bomb. It started to fizzle and fry and what have you. And people got called, the authorities got called. He then fled from the Philippines to Pakistan, which he was arrested in Pakistan, I believe in late 95, early 96, after the Oklahoma City bombing. Why do I think there's crossover? One is the Filipino connection. They were in the Philippines around the same timeline, in the same time span. Then we all of a sudden have another bomb. Both of these were truck bombs. They used slightly different ingredients, but they both were barrels loaded with diesel and another piece that I'm not going to talk about. They basically fertilizer bombs, just different fertilizers. Terry Nichols does not know how to make a bomb. Tim McVeigh does not know how to make a bomb. There is this rumor, which is untrue, that Tim McVeigh was a Green Beret. Okay, even if Tim McVeigh was a Green Beret, which he wasn't, he washed out, they don't really teach you how to make bombs. Okay? Maybe at some point they do. They didn't teach you how to make a bomb day one. Okay? He was there day one. He was not there day last. Okay? You don't just teach random guys how to make bombs and then send them back out into the world. Okay? You're going to learn that at some point. Great. But it wasn't then. Tim McVeigh, Terry Nichols, neither of them knew how to make bombs. Okay? And they both did not know how to make bombs that went boom that big. Okay? By all accounts, Tim McVeigh couldn't make a bomb, didn't know how to make a bomb, had trouble getting the ingredients, all of these things. They got a little bit, not a lot. Based on what we know, they didn't have enough ingredients to actually make the bomb as big as they thought, or the bomb as big as they actually made. Okay? The other part is assembling this. Allegedly, they rented the truck on like April the 17th, assembled the bomb, went and parked the car, the getaway car, came back, then assembled the bomb, then drove it all the way down, then antics ensued. This is all nonsense, but I'm telling you, there's enough smoke there between Ramzi Youssef and Terry Nichols that there's something there. There's a there. Will I ever find it? I don't know. Am I going to look? Yes, I am. I've been looking for a while, still going to keep looking. Anyway, so that's my favorite one currently. At least that's the one I'm working on. So, what else do we have? JFK in Vietnam. That's a cool one. Queen Elizabeth II is a lizard bee. I still don't know what you meant by that. I guess it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's pretty wild, to say the least. Let's see. Mohammed bin Salman being the actual target of the Las Vegas shooter back in 2017, 2018. If everybody remembers the Las Vegas shooter who shot up the Jason Aldean concert and killed, I think, in the neighborhood of 60, 65 people, wounding a whole bunch more. There is a compelling argument that I don't know if he was the crown prince leader he was the prince. I don't know if he was the crown prince or exactly how that works. I don't know if he was the actual leader of Saudi Arabia at the time, but Mohammed bin Salman was in Las Vegas at the time of the shooting at a nearby hotel. There's something about a helicopter being up in the air, allegedly firing on them. There's another one of, so our guy, alleged guy from the Mandalay Bay that he was shooting from down onto that crowd was shooting a bunch of 5.56 or 223 weapons, ARs basically, with bump stocks attached, that he was spraying basically 22 caliber bullets down onto the crowd, yet you had multiple people that were killed by 30 caliber bullets, like 7.62 by 51, NATO 308, Winchester, same bullet, different loadings, but the same bullet. Then there's the other part of, we just never got any sort of like actual real story out of that deal. You had the guy who was a security guard. There's a whole bunch of stuff surrounding him. Was there another security guard? Any number of things. I see, Mert, you posted about, or you commented, posted, whatever. Jamal Khashoggi. Close enough on the spelling, dude. I don't know either. Yeah, so there's a Khashoggi element to this. Jamal Khashoggi is a relative of Adnan Khashoggi, who was a arms dealer, arms trafficker. He was a middleman who would, if you needed this country to get arms, you would pay him, or you would pay the. He would work for like a arms manufacturer. You would pay the arms manufacturer, who would then pay him, who would then move the money and the guns and the what have you. And Jamal was Adnan Khashoggi's, I think, nephew or cousin. It gets a little deeper because Adnan Khashoggi was tied in with some of the Epstein guys as well, and part of that. So that's a big one. That's friggin' wild. I think, Merc, that's a good one. Seth Rich. Boy, oh boy, does the Seth Rich one go. I don't want to talk too much about it because his parents are very litigious, but let's say there's a lot of smoke surrounding Seth Rich. One of the crazy things, or one of the more interesting things that I had heard recently from a pretty decent source who's plugged into some stuff, who's not a kook as far as I know, was that the WikiLeaks is a Mossad operation or a front for Mossad/Israel government. Interesting, compelling to say the least on that. I gotta tell you, I think everybody digs a good conspiracy theory. And I don't know why other people aren't into conspiracy theories. There's some out there that are just super kooky, and I get it. Like the moon landing ones is kind of a kooky one. People being lizards is pretty kooky. Pizzagate is kind of a kooky one, but whatever. The global cabal is kind of a kooky one. I get it. But there's just something about there's just something about it that is just work. Please just work. Sam Piker is a kook idiot who hates his dog apparently. Um, the government shut down. I don't care. I haven't noticed anything. I don't know. Whatever. Sorry if Apparently, my brother-in-law is part of the military. He's not getting paid. That's a bummer. Sorry about that, but I don't know. Kind of weird that the military doesn't get paid, but the Congress people still get paid and whatnot. That's always how's that work? Kind of bullshit. Seems like they would probably get it handled if their checks stop. Whatever. I'm going to expand on some of the stuff happening with ICE that happened this week of vehicles getting boxed in, a little shooting that happened with that, and then another one getting boxed in. The stories are still a little fog of war, if you will, at this point. The reporting's all over the place. What little reporting I could find in the 20 minutes I tried to look. So I'm going to hold off on that. Just suffice it to say that ICE is being targeted right now. I'm going to predict that the Winsome Sears, the GOP candidate in Virginia, is going to lose the race for governor because they're playing the left's game with the, well, she's a black woman, and this and that. You can't play their game. You got to hit them where it hurts, okay? If you're going to play the identity politics game, well, she's running against a liberal white woman in Virginia named Abigail. So there's that. I don't know. Maybe you hit them on the issues, but whatever. That's how they won it last time. They hit them on the issues. They hit them where it hurts, and kids and schools and all that. And then, 4 years later, you fucking forget. Idiots. So you deserve to lose that one if that's how you're going to run it. But the other one that's really compelling and crazy to me is Bari Weiss. Bari Weiss. Bari Weiss. I don't really know how to say her name. Everyone says Barry, but I think it's Bari. So Bari Weiss was at the New York Times, part of the enemy class, still is part of the enemy class, by the way, just because she left under protest and wrote an op-ed or whatever, and then went and started her own thing called the Free Press, which seemed like a decent thing to go that from the original ground floor, but really had very little substance to it if you ever read it. And then once October 7th happened, they've just been calling everyone Nazis and anti-Semites. So that's odd, but why am I talking about Bari Weiss? Well, she sold her blog, known as the Free Press, for $150 million and is now the head of CBS. So that's weird. Okay. How you go from New York Times, no one liking you, you being ostracized because no one liked you, which is fine. Plenty of people don't like me. I get it. Totally get that. I also don't care. Like, you couldn't sit at the cool kids table with the New York Times, so you left. You cried and left. That's fine. I understand you don't want to work at a place that sucks. Been there, done that. Obviously, you've never nailed shingles to a piece of wood on a roof, on a slant. Perspective's everything, Bari. But how do you go from that to starting a little website blog with some other people on there with very little substance that I ever saw, and selling it for $150 million, and then being, I guess you sold it to CBS or the CBS group, because now you're the head of CBS, which is odd. I mean, I don't know what they're paying you to run CBS. I'm sorry, this is the conspiratorial part also of the news. Like, something's going on here that's bigger than this. Like, who pays $150 million for a blog that only half of you have ever even heard of, and the other half of you have never fucking read, and the only thing you know about Bari Weiss is that she calls people toadies and anti-Semites and Nazis because they won't back up Israel and everything that they do, or the Israeli government, I should be more specific, that we won't back up everything the Israeli government does, so therefore you're some sort of Nazi. So again, she just sounds like all the people she allegedly doesn't like and ran her out of the New York Times. But how you take that and your little blog, parlay that into $150 million, which, by the way, a month ago it was allegedly $250 million. So, I don't know, I think you got there. But I think you got over the whole thing of getting $150 million for a blog. And, like, I'm not hating, I just slightly jealous, your podcast was pretty terrible. I don't know if that was part of it, but it was very boring. Again, very lacking in substance. Not compelling at all. Felt overproduced for a very underproduced actual podcast. Somehow, this is worth $150 million to a CBS, who now is worth even more because they put you in charge of the network. And I assume it's just CBS News more proper, not CBS Total, but I don't know. She might be programming Big Brother soon. Who knows? But that is the conspiratorial thing of the new news. I mean, that's just wild to me. That I I I literally don't get it. I don't get it at all. I mean, she went on Joe Rogan and called Tulsi Gabbard a toady for the Assad regime, and then when asked what you mean by toady, she said, I don't know. I'm not even sure what that really means. Yeah, we know, because you're an idiot. You just wanted to be the cool kid at the table. Now you're the cool kid at the table. You thought you were, so you just started slinging all the stuff you hated against everyone else. That's great. I hope you and your wife are happy. I don't quite understand. I guess time will tell what's worth $150 million over at the Free Press. Does this mean it's not free, by the way, now? Because CBS owns it? Or some CBS News or affiliate owns it? Because they weren't free. And to think that you're going to take her and make her the head of CBS News, and now CBS News is free, I don't believe you. I don't believe it. Anyway. Okay, that's all I have for today. Maybe one day I'll get the sound fixed. The mic worked for a little bit. I don't know. It's a whole new system. I don't know. It is what it is. Not a producer. Barely talented. So, anyway, thanks everybody for hanging out. Hopefully the sound isn't too bad. Maybe next week we'll have it fixed. Odds are pretty slim. But thanks for hanging out. Catch y'all next time. See ya.